Settle down, kids. It's time for bed and another magical story. Dragons ruled Tarkir. Everyone obeyed, except Narset, a brave monk. With magic, she sent twin brothers on a daring quest for help and hope. Her spies arrived in Dominaria. There, they found wise, winged warriors. A simple magpie glimpsed more than its reflection in a rusty saw. Visions of other birds, made of metal, answered the cause to battle. Well equipped for war, our heroes sought to reclaim bright skies from dragons. Studious monks wrote of this storm, so their people will never forget. Sleep well. Tomorrow, you will face new challenges. Together, we win. Hello, my name is Pauper, and as my name suggests, I'm a father who plays in the Pauper format. Welcome to our first match. We won the die roll, and having too many lands we mulligan. This looks like a good hand. I really like the Artificer's Assistant. This little bird will help us scry anytime we cast an artifact for just 1 blue mana. I think the artist, Chris Seaman, did a fantastic job. We scry after our mulligan. We don't need an extra plains. We have all the mana we need. Not much of our deck costs more than 2 mana. Put the bird onto the field. Making sure we have our virus protection pop up. Our opponent plays a tap land, gaining 1 life. Signals are playing black and green. Here we have a lot of options, many of which are birds. You'll find our deck has lots of evasive threats. And soon you can see how our plan comes into play, casting lots of artifacts to trigger the heroic mechanic, new in Dominaria. Here's Serra's Disciple. We'll attack with our little bird, doing one point of damage, just pecking away our opponent. Now we see our opponent's deck becomes a tortured existence. Basking Ruwala comes down. He has the mana to grow, so we'll have to be careful of watching out for that little Ruwala. Our Serra's Disciple has First Strike. We're going to cast a Spider Silk Net for 0 mana. That will trigger both our Artificer's Assistant and Serra's Disciple. I found it interesting that Serra's Disciple is in the Church of Serra. Oh, here we see an ancient den. We already have one. Casting that Spider Silk Net triggers. You'll notice our storm count is 1. We do include Astral Steel, an instant which gives our creature +1/+2. for each time we've cast another spell as well. Casting Glint Hawk allows us to bring back the Spider Silk Net, which we can easily recast again for 0 mana. And our Glint Hawk Idol is an artifact. Oh, look at that. We have a Bone Splitter. We'll definitely want to put that on top of our library. The Glint Hawk Idol, an artifact, will really help us because our opponent can't really target that easily. We'll attack with our very powerful Serra's Disciple. Yeah, the Church of Serra, based off of the Serra Angels. I found it interesting that lots of birds chose to flock to that cause, and that's why I named this deck. Our opponent plays a Fume Spitter. That could be problematic. Our Serra's Disciple only has 1 toughness. Spider Silk Net might help with that. Let's see what we draw here in the next turn. It took out our Serra Disciple before we could plan around that, but we know we have Bone Splitter. Casting that again triggers scrying, and we see the Glint Hawk. When we cast an artifact, that also triggers our Glint Hawk Idol to become a bird, a 2/2 bird with flying. There are lots of artifact synergies here. I really enjoy this deck. I'm excited to look at the new Dominaria cards with my kids. I think a lot of the cards in this deck will catch our opponents by surprise as we swing in. Our birds are doing a lot of heavy lifting for us in this match. We're already ahead 17-8. Our opponent casts Dead Weight and takes out a bird. We play many creatures in this deck, often more than our opponents, aside from a wider token strategy. Their Root Wallow is able to do some damage, but we're going to go ahead and play our Glint Hawk again, pull back our Spider Silk Net, cast it, and see that we have another Spider Silk Net. What would you do in that situation? Would you put that on top of your library or put it on the bottom? Playing Bone Splitter, equipping that onto our Glint Hawk Idol. Thankfully, our opponent's Dead Weight, something we already saw, won't be able to target our Glint Hawk Idol, because at the end of the turn it becomes an artifact. Now it does tap, so I'm not able to use it on defense so well. Tortured Existence. Activating that to get back a Fume Spitter. Oh. Even still, with losing some creatures, we should be able to win this race. I'm quite confident that our opponent forgets that we can activate Glint Hawk Idol for a single white mana and use that to swing in. Here we see Elusive Spellfist, another tool in our deck box. For blue and 1, it has almost a form of prowess. It's +1/+0 and cannot be blocked whenever we play a non-creature spell. And artifacts, most of them are non-creature spells. Glint Hawk Idol comes into play for that single white mana, and we equip it. And that should take care of game 1 against green and black Tortured Existence. This is my first time playing against that deck. I believe it's a favorite of Alex Ullman's, so I'm happy to win our first match. Now let's look on to game number 2 of our match. Here we see we don't have enough lands. We see 2 elusive Spellfists in blue, and Artificer's Assistant. We certainly want to keep that little bird. But we have to mulligan down. This land count seems good. We sided in Augur Ilvec, a 1/3 with Shadow. With Fume Spitters, in our last game I wanted something with a little bit more toughness. And Serra's Disciple, while it was flying in first strike, never really got to see much combat against an opponent's creature. Seeker of the Way helps out with our life totals, and also has Prowess. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, it has lifelink and gets +1/+1. We don't have any turn 1 plays, but neither really does our opponent. Tortured Existence comes out. I wonder if they mulligan into that. If that's an aggressive strategy to mulligan into a Tortured Existence. Now we have some options. Let's go ahead and put out our Shadow creature. Creatures without Shadow cannot block it, but it can't block creatures without Shadow either. Excuse me there, we got a little excited by our little cleric from the shadows. And again, with Fume Spitter, our Serra Disciple would have easily died to that. We're able to swing in for 1 after casting our Glinthawk Idol. Again, that artifact creature is going to come into play quite handy. A lot of birds seem to help us out in this deck. Considering the story I wrote for my WordPress blog, I had decided to take the monks from Tarkir and place them in a quest to fight the dragons. Here we see our Grave Scrabbler come into play, casting with the Madness, and Fume Spitter comes back. I wonder if he'll use that Fume Spitter again on our cleric. It doesn't have much power now, 0, but we know we have lots of equipment in this deck. We can help boost that at some point. Here I play Seeker of the Way in an attempt to really draw out more removal from our opponent, while the Bonesaw I just cast will trigger our Seeker of the Way. It has Summoning Sickness. I intended to have it come into play so we can swing and do some more damage with our Augur Ilvec. I could have equipped it to the Bird Idol, but chose to go ahead with Shadow because I wanted to see that play and I wanted to try out its utility in this deck. Dead Weight, an enchantment, targets our Seeker of the Way but cannot target our artifact. Opponent getting more lands and being able to draw into more lands from hands to discard it maybe at some point. Here's our little bird again. We're going to go ahead and pick up our Bonesaw. Casting that again. We're really looking forward to scrying and seeing if we can continue to apply tempo. With a Glinthawk, we certainly can. Again, birds seem to be our best strategy for this deck. Being able to cast and recast simple artifact helps keep our land count low and allow us to put in more creatures, more birds. Fume Spitter's going to put a -1/-1 counter on our artifact creature. It will keep that even when it reverts back to an artifact. So Fume Spitter seems to be working really well for our opponent. Again, with lots of creatures, especially creatures that people may not expect. I hope that we can slide in for some secret damage with Evasion and Shadow, unblockable creatures. We lose another creature to dead weight. Again, really happy that we have Glinthawk Idol that can't be targeted in those ways. Olivia's Dragoon comes into play. Interesting to note that if our opponent discards a card, he might be able to combat our creatures that fly, but not our creatures with shadow. Grave Scrabbler comes in to attack us. I decide to let it go through. I don't want our bird blocking that. I'd rather have it stick around a while and scry for us when we cast some artifacts. Here I play a very questionable move, probably more so from my excitement to see ideas unbound. I wanted to draw into some more threats. Again, having lots of creatures, I anticipate we might draw some lands or some artifacts that we can cast. This sorcery for 2 blue lets us draw 3 cards, and at the end of turn, discard 3 cards. With a lot of 0 mana cost artifacts, we're very likely to be able to play them quickly, and we do draw into a Bone Saw and a Bone Splitter. Journey to Nowhere seems attractive to me, but I feel that we can go ahead and just play our Bone Splitter and our Bone Saw. I'm not too worried about a Vampire Berserker. Again, it would really have to have our opponent discard a card to give it flying, and they only have 1 card in hand at this time. I'll take some time making decisions. Now scry into an Artificer's Assistant. I don't think we need 2 of them, because when we scry, I think we're good enough with what we have. What would you have done? Would you have kept the bird? Well, I think it's a pretty bird. I think we need more threats, bigger threats, especially knowing Fume Spitter's out there, and with Tortured Existence they could get that back. Two of our creatures have -1/-1 counters on them. Now I have to discard 3 cards after Ideas Unbound. I chose not to attack there. I really feared our losing our Glinthawk Idol. With opponent having 1 card in hand, they may have decided to discard that even if it wasn't a creature. And it wouldn't have been a positive trade for us. Again, I'm not going to block with the bird. Opportunities to scry seem more important. And we got another shadow creature. This will become very helpful. Again, being new to the Pauper metagame, I feel that my place is to really use new cards. I don't feel as I'm experienced as a lot of other players, but I also am not as jaded. I like to see new answers, and I like spending time with my kids, looking at some new cards and seeing how they could work into new decks. Our opponent's going to look at some things. I'm very disturbed to see a Gurmag Angler being thrown into the graveyard with a Tortured Existence. They could easily get that back. I'm wondering what they decided to keep though. Anything bigger than a Gurmag Angler, I admit, I'm kind of scared. I'm not sure all the tools of the Tortured Existence deck, but here we see one, probably one of their best against us. This Tree Folk comes into play. It can take a -1/-1 counter off of itself to destroy an artifact of ours. I would think my opponent would target Bone Splitter because it gives us +2 on power. We see that zombie is really doing a lot of work for our opponent, but we're still ahead 14-11. Gonna play another Augur Ilvec. This human cleric has Shadow and does not have a -1/-1 counter on it. I am really surprised to see how long our blue bird has been around. It looks like a magpie to me. And here we do lose Bone Splitter, and our opponent now has a 4/4 threat. I start to wonder if we're going to race 9-14, knowing that he has a possible creature with flying and a 4/4 body to either block or attack. I think this becomes a pivotal play in the game. Our opponent decides to play a card, creature card, Krosan Tusker, quite a large body. They did not cycle it, so it comes into play. While I was worried about our 4/4, a 6 power and a 4/4 really get me worrying at this point, especially since I haven't been playing this deck for too long. But we can't feel defeated. We gotta keep trying to use our birds and our shadows to kind of sneak out some victories. And in the process, we'll learn a little bit. I don't want to block with the bird. I'll probably say that a lot. I probably have already said it. We'll let the damage come through, taking us to 8. We'll go ahead and return our Glint Hawk Idol to hand, because it won't have a -1/-1 counter when it comes back into play. We'll trigger our Scrying to see Survivor's Encampment. You can tap that to add Colorless, or tap it in a creature to add 1 mana of any color. That can be helpful sometimes, especially when we get cards like Flayer Husk that won't really be looking to attack too much, but does provide us a small body. Here Shadow comes into play to get us a couple extra points of damage. My opponent has a lot of options, but they play Crypt Rats. I had to think about that. It's been a long time since I've played in paper, but I do remember Crypt Rats. I'm an older gentleman and do remember times when 4th Revision Revised came out. I kind of like the look of newer cards. They seem a lot crisper. What do you think about the design space on Grave Scrabbler and a lot of those shifted cards? I'm nonplussed by them, but don't really mind them either. Now here come the big threats. Our opponent really has applied some pressure, and we're forced to finally block with both of our birds. Our opponent has a strong lead with Crypt Rats. They hold the edge. And here I think our opponent is calculating, trying to figure out some things and some math about the Crypt Rats. I think they forgot that our Glint Hawk Idol can turn into a bird with a simple white mana. So they tapped the correct lands they needed. And since some of their creatures have already taken damage, that tree folk dies as long as a lot of other creatures. Again, our shadowy augur in Vivek has a toughness of 3 and is able to survive that, whereas Serra Disciple would not have allowed us to keep a creature on board. That will become very, very important as this match comes to a close. I want to say thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you forgive my inexperience with online play and the Pauper format and video editing. But here we turn a Glint Hawk Idol into a smart play by turning it into a bird, and we have an opportunity to put some equipment on our creatures with evasion, flying, and shadow. We're able to go ahead and put a lot of threats on. I'm not sure what our opponent may have in hand. With a green mana, I was slightly hesitant, but we go ahead and we try anyway. We swing in for some damage. More than enough, unless our opponent has something else in mind. They do not. And it looks like we're going to win our match against Tortured Existence. I really am happy to have won this match and shared my deck ideas with you today. Please leave any comments or suggestions. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and feel free to visit me on Twitter and my WordPress blog. All my social media contains Pappy Pauper, because that's who I am. And that's who I'd like to continue to be for you and for my kids. Thank you, and see you soon.